Hi, let's talk about January books. I started a project of each month doing like a themely reading month. I'm gonna read things outside of the theme because I have book clubs and other things going on, but that's the main goal, finishing these like set TBRs for each month. January's theme was reading all of Books and Lala's favorite books. Not all of them, but like reading from her favorite books. I read a total of 9 books for this project, and then I read another 3 books that I'm going to talk about at the end. The first book that I read for the project was My Heart is a Chainsaw by Stephen Graham Jones. I gave it 4 stars. I really enjoyed reading horror. I don't read horror at all, and I don't watch horror movies, so I was a bit scared that I was not gonna be able to enjoy. This is from the point of view of a girl. Her name is Jade, and she's convinced that there is a slasher movie happening in her town. And I was gonna say because she's obsessed with horror movies, but at the same time, it is because it is happening. And she's obsessed with horror movies, so that's why she notices that this is happening. A lot of the characters fall into like horror movie tropes. I don't particularly know what the tropes are, so I thought I was gonna have a hard time enjoying this book or understanding this book or following the story because I don't get the references, but I think I managed to understand quite a bit. And I gave it 4 stars. I really enjoyed reading from her point of view, but I am not sure if I'm gonna continue in. I don't know if I am that invested in the story outside of what happened in this particular novel. And then I read The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. I gave it 4.5 stars. So this follows the life of Addie. When she was very young, she was promised to marry like this old guy by her family because it was the 1700s, I guess. Instead of marrying him, she makes a deal with the devil and she gets to live forever and do whatever she wants, but she will always be forgotten. As soon as you like stop looking at her, you turn your face and you come back, you already don't know who she is. I would say the book follows her entire journey, so from that moment forward, but the present timeline is following Addie as she meets this guy that actually remembers her. And you see how that unfolds, what that means for her, and what that means for the curse that she's placed under. It was beautiful, beautifully written. Like, I feel I need to reread this book and highlight passages and all of that. So yeah, it was very beautiful, very moving, but it was very long. We follow her entire journey, and some chapters are from the present timeline and some chapters are from her past life. Some of those chapters I felt like were very unnecessary. I don't know. Then I read Catherine House by Elizabeth Thomas. I gave this 3.5. This is a hard book because nothing actually happens. You're just following this girl. Her name is Inez, and she's living in this place. It's called Catherine House. This is a higher learning institution, and she's figuring out what happens at Catherine House, what is going on. But at the same time, you're reading from the point of view of a character that couldn't care less about what is going on. So it's a hard book to get into. It's a hard book to continue reading because you're like, why should I invest my time in reading this book when the character is not investing any energy into anything at this point? So yeah, but I found the ending was very full circle. At least to me, it felt full circle, and yeah, overall I enjoyed it. It was very vibey. Then I read Our Wives Under the Sea by Julia Armfield. Again, this is horror, but I don't know exactly what horror means in this case because it's not scary, at least for me. I gave it 2 stars because I don't think I understood the story, and I felt like it wasn't very well explained what was going on, and maybe that's my struggle, my particular struggle with listening to this audiobook and not being fluent in English. Like, English is not my first language, so maybe that's where the difficulty is coming from, but I didn't understand what was going on. And as much as I thought the writing was beautiful and the love story between them was beautiful, I don't think I fully understood what was going on to be able to give it any higher rating. Then during the middle of the month, I read other things and then picked it back up on the project, and I read Honey and Spice by Bolu Babalola. I gave this 4.5 stars again, but I rounded up to 5 because I enjoyed it a little bit more than I enjoyed Addie LaRue. This is a romance, a fake dating romance. set in college. Kiki has a radio show at college where she does like dating advice, and she gets mingle with one of the guys that she talks bad about at the show, and to sort of explain why they set this segment on the show called Gotta Hear Both Sides. It follows them doing this show and then also hanging out outside of the show, and suddenly the fake dating thing is no longer fake. And yeah, as you can imagine, I really enjoyed it. I enjoy the characters, I enjoy their growth individually, I enjoy the whole college and radio show aspect. I enjoyed the steamy scenes, and they weren't cringy, and I didn't find the language to be awkward. But I give it 4.5 stars and not 5 because it was super heavy on the pop cultural references, and I hate that on books. It is a pet peeve of mine, so yeah. But overall, it was very good, and I would recommend this. Then I read Bunny by Mona Awad. I couldn't end this video without reading Bunny. This is maybe the quintessential Books and Lala's book. I gave it 4 stars. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was much more cohesive than I thought it would be going into it, because again, I had read Our Lives Under the Sea, and that's one of her weird books, and I couldn't understand a thing, so I was worried that I wouldn't understand Bunny because again, it's a weird book, but it was very easy to follow. It is weird because it's very horror-y and cultish, and yeah, I really enjoyed it. I think I would read from Mona Awad again. I found her writing to be very interesting, and she does very experimental things with her writing. This book is a proof of that, and I really enjoyed it, so I think I'm gonna read from her again. And then I read Middle Game by Shanna Maguire. I gave this 3 stars. I know everybody that I follow on Goodreads gave it 5, but again, I didn't understand much. Like, I could follow the book much better than I could follow Julia Armfield's, but the backstory and why we were there, like the whole alchemy thing, I couldn't really understand. And I know that you're thrown into this world, you're trying to piece things together as the story goes along, but I don't know if it's again because English is not my first language and I don't exactly understand what alchemy means, but I couldn't understand why everything was happening. But I enjoyed a lot the characters and their relationships, and that aspect of following through a friendship all of those years. It reminded me a lot of this aspect on Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. Like, I really enjoy that aspect of both of these books, and I think I would like to follow friends and siblings through a long history and long period of time and their backs and forths and all of that. That was an aspect that I really enjoyed, and all of the characters felt very well rounded, so I think I would read from Shanna Maguire again, but I don't think I'm gonna continue in this series. Then I read How High We Go in the Dark by Sequoia Nagamatsu. This I gave it 4 stars. It was a collection of short stories, but at the same time, all of the short stories are intertwined, so it doesn't feel like an anthology. It feels like a novel, just told in chapters, and each chapter you're following a different person in this world. This is a dystopian novel. First novel, we follow a man that goes to the Arctic to continue his daughter's research after she's passed away, and she was researching the corpse of this woman that was found. Alongside it was found a virus. And then we follow the ancient plague that changes the world, basically. This book had the dystopian quality and the loose threads intertwining different stories that Station 11 has, but it felt much more metaphorical and lyrical than Station 11 felt for me. I really enjoyed it. I feel like the first half of the book was much stronger than the second half, which is why I'm giving it 4 stars. But the final story just tied it all together in such a beautiful way. I keep thinking about it, so yeah. And my final read for the January project was In My Dreams I Hold a Knife by Ashley Winstead. I gave this 4 stars. This is a thriller. It reminded me of why I love thrillers and why I should read thrillers more. But at the same time, it worries me because I could figure out some parts, and I don't know if reading more thrillers is just gonna make twists feel like already done before. I really enjoy this. People comp this with If We Were Villains and Secret History because it's set in a university setting, but to me this feels more like Gossip Girl than dark academia and highbrow studying and learning things. It feels more like Gossip Girl, and it has a full cast of characters and they're all horrible people, and yeah, it was super fun. and I really enjoyed it. I gave it 4 stars, but then again, because I could figure out some twists, and the final twist at the end was very like, nah, I don't know. I gave it 4 stars in the end. So wrapping up the January project of reading books on Lala's books, the goal with this project was reading more books from my favorite booktuber, because I get a lot of my recommendations from her. I'm just now getting back into reading and figuring out what I like, what I don't like, what can help me in my job, because I work in publishing and all of that. I take a lot of my recommendations from her, and I wanted to see if her favorites align with my favorites and what kind of recommendations I can get from her, which is why I read a lot of different kinds of books. So I read a little bit of horror, I read a little bit of overall fiction, things that have unexplained magic, weird things, romance, sci-fi, and thrillers, because I wanted to see where my tastes align with hers, so I can take better recommendations from her in the future. And overall, I think we have similar tastes, but some of the weirder things I'm gonna be a little bit wary of, because I have a difficulty understanding things. But overall, I really enjoyed reading her favorites, and I'm really happy with the project for January. I read another 3 books this month. One of them was a super short novella that I read while making dinner, and I shouldn't count it because I really don't remember much of it, any of it, to be honest, and that was The Empress of Salt and Fortune by Nevo. Again, this was a recommendation from Kayla. It was free on Scribd, and I read it while making dinner. I don't recall much of the story. I just remember thinking that it felt like a Chinese drama that I watched back in, I think, 2016. And it had the same vibes. That's all I can recall. And that the writing was very lyrical and beautiful. That's all I can recall. And I gave it overall 3 stars. And then I read 2 books for book clubs. One of them was for my in-person book club at my job. And that was this book, O Escravo by Carolina Maria de Jesus. This is a original novel. It had never been published before. It had never been seen before. This author is famous for her journals, talking about her life living in a slum in Brazil and being a Black woman and raising her children. I have not read her journals before reading this. I don't know if the context would make this experience different. I gave it overall 3 stars. It touches on a lot of different things and themes that are still present in current day Brazilian literature, and her point of view was very poignant and interesting to read from. But overall, the novel is it is a manuscript, so on the first few pages you can see what it looked like. So this is literally her manuscript. It wasn't edited at all. All of the punctuation and grammar mistakes are here. So this feels undone, and that's the whole point. So I can't judge it based on that, but I can't help but think that if she got edited, this could have been a great novel. I'm excited to discuss this with our book club. I'm not sure if this could be translated, because I think it would miss a lot of this aspect of being a manuscript and being original and being how you talk and how you speak and how you think in Portuguese, specifically for her. This is a great read, like a great recommendation about Brazilian literature, but I don't think it translates well to other types of viewers or readers, in fact. My next read was for a book club, Mahi's book club. I found her TikTok, and you can join if you want to, I think. It is a translated books book club. So we're reading from different parts of the world and in English to discuss it. We just had our discussion last weekend, and it was great. I really enjoyed it, and I'm gonna continue in the book club. Our first read was The River Between by Ngugi wa Thiong'o. This is a Kenyan author and a Kenyan classic. I read Penguin's edition of this book. It explores 2 villages, each on a different side of this river. It follows how both Christianity and education, never the same, which was very poignant and very interesting, never equated as the same thing. Christianity and education changes the lives of the peoples in this village, in these 2 villages in particular. It was beautiful. I really, really enjoyed it. I was very surprised at how much I enjoyed it and how much I could relate to other reads that I had, mainly because Again, this is a classic, and I am always wary of classics because I'm very scared that I'm not going to be able to understand it because of the language and because this is a translation. So I was worried that the translation wouldn't be good and it would make understanding harder, but I'm very surprised that the translation was very easy to follow and the language wasn't difficult at all despite being a classic. I think the fact that there is a penguin cover makes me wary and scared that it's going to be like reading Jane Austen, but I'm reading from a different country. Of course, the classic from a different country is gonna read different, but I was scared and then I was very pleasantly surprised that it was so easy to follow. Even though it touches on themes that are outside of my particular culture, it was very poignant and very much easy to relate to, even though it is completely distant from me. Again, I was super happy that I could relate to so many of my other reads, other things that I read in my life, specifically things that I read for school. We had an African literature class. We read different authors, and even though we read them because they're from Mozambique, and I think we only read from Mozambique in that class. In that particular class, I had other reads from other countries, but mainly countries that speak Portuguese. Even though they're from different countries, the African experience of being colonized and the Brazilian experience of being colonized is it's a different experience for each country, but at the same time, it has the same pain and it creates the same struggles and it creates the same divides in each different country. And it was so different to read how two different aspects of this colonization, the Christianity aspect and also the education aspect, and how one of the members of this community became a teacher and wanted to open schools, and how he was ostracized for bringing white men's culture to the land and to his tribes and to his villages. Yeah, it was super interesting. I really enjoyed all of the themes that it brought forward, and reading reviews, I see that this author talked about some of these themes in different works. I'm very interested in reading more from him in the future. Overall, I had a great month, a great reading month. For February, I'm already reading. I already finished a few books on my TBR, but February's theme is reading like the new literary it girl on TikTok and on YouTube and all of that. The goal is to read more literary fiction and highbrow kind of things because I don't get very much into that, but through reads that I think will be easier, more accessible for me because they are very well read and well liked by girls that are the same age and the same kind of vibes as me. I feel like that's the February project, and I will post a video as soon as that's done. I will share again all of the other book club reads that I get to read and all of the kind of different things that I get up to. So yeah, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye!